Hey guys, this is Gamer Guy. Welcome to another Pokemon trading card game history video. This time we're on Rising Rivals, which is the final set of the 2009 season. One important thing to note before we get into this one too much is that we do not actually have a rotation this year. We're still going to be on Diamond Pearl on even throughout the next next 4 sets. So it's going to be a very big format compared to what we had before. But to be fair, a lot of the cards from early DP we've either banned out because we've used them, or they're just not as strong as the stuff that's around in the last like 3 sets. So I don't know how much of an impact it's going to make overall, but it is there anyway. If you did miss out on seeing the previous set, by the way, the actual Platinum Battles on stream, I have the video, the VOD linked for YouTube stuff, because it is kind of interesting and it seems like nobody actually saw it on YouTube. So if you are watching these and you are curious to see what happened in the previous part, there you go. Link is in the description. Anyway, with that out of the way, this is I think it was a 120 card set, so kind of in that sort of mid-range bit for just now, and there's a ton of really good cards in here. The SP Pokemon take another step up. There are a couple of ones from the Galactic stuff, like Saturn actually has a really important one down here for future formats, but it's mostly Gym Leaders and Elite Four that we have now. So say Maylene over here has Lucario. I think most of the Gym Leaders, if not all of them, have got 2 Pokemon, and then the Elite Four have got 4 or 5 depending on who they are, I suppose. I don't know, like, for some reason Aaron has got like 5, and Bertha's got 5. I think, actually no, Aaron's got 4, Bertha's got 5, Lucian's got 5. The fact that some of them have level X's don't seem to factor into the numbers either. Technically that means Lucian has 6, because he's a... No, he has 7, because he's got 2 level X's, because he hogs all the glory, I suppose. I don't know. But yeah, it's more than just Galactic stuff this time, even though we do still see some of them, like the Electrode over here. So, SP gets a giant jump in this set. You can see I have some other cards around the rest of them here as well now. These are going to be key cards to go alongside some of the important players in this set. So, that is going to be worth noting in its own right. We also have a couple of promos down here. There is one which is extremely notable, so we will definitely be taking a look at that as we go. Without further ado, let's jump into it. So SP Pokemon do get a lot of support in this set as well. We'll start with the trainers because they are the main sort of bit here, and 3 of them are SP focused. Aaron's collection lets you search your discard pile for 2 in combination of Pokemon SP and basic energy cards to go into your hand, which is pretty good. It's kind of like I guess a lesser Clara from nowadays, but this lets you get energy cards immediately into hand. The only other way we can do that at the moment is energy restore, which is very, very unreliable, as I am very familiar with, but that is okay. So we can get that. We can also get SP Pokemon. This is not just base non-level X though, so we can get the level X's back, and there are a couple of very, very important SP level X's here, or you could just get Dialga back, that works too. We have Bertha's Warmth over here. I don't think this card's going to see very much play, but it is nice to see a utility supporter at least. Remove 5 damage counters from one of your Pokemon SP. That's cool. I don't think 5 damage counters is enough to actually swing stuff, but maybe you could turn like a 2-hit KO into a 3-hit KO on the giant Dialga or something. So, I don't know, possible. Flint's Willpower lets you attach your basic energy from your hand to one of your SP Pokemon. This would be really cool if we actually had ways of searching energy out of the deck, right? Because most of the time, like Rosanna, Cyrus are great, but they take your supporter for the turn, and then next turn you would have to play Flint, and that just seems a little bit slow. We do have a couple of evolution type cards that could help. Specifically, Bronzong lets you search energy out the deck, but it's just a little bit awkward, and I don't think it's going to see play because of that. Lucian's assignment is pretty cool. You get to move as many energy cards from one of your Pokemon that you like to another one. This is generic, so you don't have to use it in SP decks, and SP decks have got Bronzong anyway, so they probably don't need this effect, but this is really neat for decks that, like, say, Typhlosion is a good example from the past. where you get a bunch of energy from the discard onto your bench Pokemon. Then you could move that energy to your active, which is pretty good. Magnezone, it would be the opposite, where you can get a ton of energy onto your active Pokemon and then shift it to the bench. Magnezone, you've already got the level X that does it though, so I don't know. There's a Leafeon in this set that maybe actually makes it work, so we could do that instead. Supporter-wise, otherwise we do still have a couple to go over. Underground Expedition makes its return. This is the last time until Gen 6. Is it Gen 6? No, it's Gen 7 is when the Celestial Storm thing came in. Gen 7 reprints this card, but until then, I think this is it. This has got very interesting synergy within this era though, because we do have cards that manipulate the bottom deck. You know, Claydol puts the cards to the bottom of the deck, so you could potentially store things down there that you can get back with Underground Expedition later, so long as you don't shuffle the deck for anything else. Also, Uxie puts itself and the energy that you use for Psychic Restore, puts that at the bottom of the deck, so Underground Expedition can be a guaranteed Uxie as well. So, a couple of interesting ways of using the card. And then we have Volkner's Philosophy. This is like Bad Bianca, I suppose, or Birch in a way. It's technically better than those, but it reads like a bad one. You may discard a card from your hand, then draw until you have 6 cards in your hand. You have to be able to draw before you play this card, because the discard is optional. So if you have 7 or more cards in hand, you can't play this card, but this is a very good turbo-based card, where you can use a ton of item cards in your hand and then just draw 5 or even 6 cards in the same turn. Really, really good. Also has a little bit of discard synergy. Yeah, if you don't like Felicity, this is probably the card that would sort of get you around on it, because you could just play draw until 6 and that is perfectly fine, but you could also discard if you want to for that kind of synergy. We do have some other good trainer cards in here as well. The Pokemon Contest Hall is kind of crazy, but it is on a coin toss, so temper expectations a little bit. But if the turn player flips heads when they declare this stadium, they get a basic Pokemon from their deck and potentially a Pokemon tool from their deck as well, which is wild. You could use this to get a Pokemon SP and energy gain straight from the deck, which is really, really strong. Problem is it's on a coin flip and it is reciprocal, so that can be a little bit difficult to work with, but yeah, crazy effect. Sunny Shore is really good for the lightning stuff, which actually does get a massive boost in this set. Any damage done by attacks on lightning Pokemon not affected by resistance, and lightning Pokemon in play don't have a weakness. Given that lightning is basically always weak to fighting, that's a really good one to have around, but the not resistance thing is really important to deal with Flygon out of this set, which is super, super good. Also Nidoqueen, both resistant to lightning, so there is that. There is a technical machine for Team Galactic Pokemon now, or SPs just in general. I'm not convinced this one is super good though. For 3 energy, you this attack, or 2 energy plus the energy gain, because this is a technical machine, not a tool, you can attach both. Damage Portal lets you choose one of the opponent's Pokemon, do 10 damage to it times the number of damage counters on the Pokemon this is on. Even for like 2 energy, that's still a bit expensive. Maybe with double colorless this could be good, but by then we have Garchomp that just full heals them instead. That's probably better, so I don't know. SP Radar is a far more important card though. I did mention this one a little bit in the previous set, that it was in the waiting room. You have basically a Bebe search on an item card, but specifically for SP Pokemon. So choose a card from your hand, put it on top of the deck, search your deck for an SP. This can be a level X as well. Put it into hand, shuffle your deck afterwards. The important thing is that you can get this off of Cyrus's Conspiracy, and that means that Cyrus turns into a search card as well as a self-chaining thing. So now we can actually get our Pokemon started with this thing as well. Notable energy in here, of course we have Darkness and Metal, but we also have an SP energy, which is Rainbow Energy for just SP Pokemon. You can attach this to non-SP Pokemon to provide 1 colorless though. It doesn't drop off, which is interesting. And then Upper Energy is double colorless for non-level X Pokemon, but only if you're behind on prizes. It's a colorless energy only if you attach it to a level X, or if you are even or ahead on the prize count. So that's kind of weird. As far as the level X's go, there are a lot of them in this set, and most of them are relevant enough to talk about here. Alakazam is probably the weakest one, or second weakest to Miss Mages maybe. This has the damage switch, which is your damage swap from the base set Alakazam, but it's only for SP Pokemon. That could still be really good to concentrate all the damage on something you want a Poke turn. Its attack is not very good, and the base Alakazam up here somewhere, this attack is also not very good. So we're not really going to be ever using this thing to attack, which is a shame, but it's there, it's neat. Floatzel deserves a proper talk-in actually, because both parts of this card are good for different reasons. It doesn't work with energy gain, so we've got to get that one out of the way right now. But Insight for 0 energy on the base Floatzel lets you get 2 supporter cards from your discard back into hand. That's pretty strong. Giant Wave 2 water for 50, can't use it next turn. Okay, you know, it's not that common that you're going to be attacking with this thing, but it could come up. And then Floatzel level X, you get 0 retreat, which is good. And this will come into play with Feraligatr Prime when we get into the Hard Gold Soul Silver stuff. Whenever any of your water Pokemon, excluding Floatzel GL, are KO'd by damage from an attack, you may, or for specifically the opponent's attack, you may put that Pokemon and all cards attached to it from your discard pile into your hand. So this is used with Feraligatr Prime, which rain dances a ton of energy down, and you can just go ahead and recover the Pokemon straight away. With Broken Time Space from the previous set, that means you can evolve it immediately as well and just splash all those energy straight back down. Really solid. Flygon is one that warrants its own speaking as well here. The base Flygon has Rainbow Float to allow any of your Pokemon to retreat for free if a basic energy on Flygon matches their type. So usually this is going to be fighting, sometimes psychic as well because Nidoqueen is common in the deck. Sandwall for 2 colorless does 40 damage and discards a stadium that the opponent has in play, not that you have in play. But if you do manage to discard the stadium by this effect, it's got agility next turn, so that's pretty strong. And then Power Swing for 3 colorless energy, 60 plus 10 for every evolution on your bench. This lets you play very similarly to the Fire Red Leaf Green Nidoqueen, which was one of the strongest decks of its time. Needless to say, this is also a very strong card. 0 Retreat as well is really good. And that trait is kept up with the level X as well. The level X is pretty modal in the way that it can play. Wind Erosion lets you discard the top card of your opponent's deck in between turns, so this is the first and one of the only successful mill strategies in the game. Extreme Attack is also pretty strong though. 3 colorless energy, snipe 150 on one of the opponent's level X Pokemon in play. Usually going to result in a one-shot unless it's the hyper tanky ones, so that's really good. I mentioned this thing stalling with Mill, and that's because the Trapinch in the Secret Wonder set actually lets you do Sand Tomb that prevents the opponent from retreating next turn for a single energy and does 10 damage. You use this on the Flygon with Memory Berry, which was from the previous set, and again upgraded from Gen 3 and Gen 2 stuff actually. And it lets you always do this now. You do not have to discard at the end of the turn that you attack or whatever. So you can permanently Sand Tomb with Flygon level X, keep one of the opponent's really awkward Pokemon in the active slot that they can't attack with, and then mill them to death. Very slow, very painful, very funny at the same time though. We may have to try that out. Moving on to the next level X here, it's Gallade. This Gallade base actually is really good too for Psychic and the Colorless. You do 20 to the active and 10 to each of the opponent's bench that have any damage counters on them. Single energy attack with an energy gain, which is really solid. Feint is also fine, 1 Psychic, 2 colorless, 50 damage, not affected by resistance. Decent enough attack when you are dealing with something that is resistant to Psychic, but most of the time that's not really something you need to care about. The level X does go to 100 HP, which is pretty strong. It's not the best level X we've got in this slot, but it's still fine. Bladestorm is what you really want out of this though. When you level X your active Gallade, from the hand, so no level max, but when you level it up naturally, put a damage counter on each of the opponent's Pokemon. Super Crobat. It's really good. Synergizes with its own attack as well. Psychic Double Colors to do 40 plus 10 for every damage counter on the defending Pokemon. So it does a really, really solid job of being a good spread deck that Crobat pings can help chop up to get a bunch of damage down. Aimed Cut then does the finishing blow. If you have like 3 damage counters on the Machamp, then that just KOs it straight away, which is really good. And yes, super strong card. Hippowdon level X is a weird one. This is like Fiber Jar, I suppose, in its own way. Sand reset once per game. One of the very few times that you see this outside of like V-Star powers and GX attacks and stuff. Once per game, you can have each player shuffle non-Pokemon, non-supporter cards from play into the deck. So what do we mean by this? Like any tool cards, any stadium that's in play, any energy that's in play, all get shuffled into the deck. You can only do this once in a game, and if this gets blocked by Power Spray, that's it. That's your one use of it for the game. So make it count, but if you can, this can be very devastating. Double Shoot is an interesting attack here, but very expensive for what it does. 2 fighting, 2 colorless to discard 2 fighting, and then snipe 2 of the opponent's bench for 40 damage each. It can't even hit active, which is really annoying, so not the strongest attack out there. The Hippowdon we're using for it is actually in this set. It's very similar to Blissey, actually. First off, the Pokebody lets you put a damage counter on each of the opponent's level X's between turns, so if they are playing a heavy like SP level X deck or something, this can be very strong. Save Sand is the Blissey-like attack, 1 colorless, 20 plus 10 for every energy attached to Hippowdon, but before doing damage you can get a fighting from your discard pile to attach to the Hippowdon. So you build it up just like you would Blissey. And then Groundquake for the same 2 fighting, 2 colors cost as the level X, 80 damage, pretty solid. Hard to charge up, but solid. But it also does 10 to every base non-evolved bench Pokemon in play. This includes your own, so I don't know if that affects the deck too much off it, but yeah, a little bit of a quirky card to say the least. And then we have like the 2 strongest, one of the strongest decks, one of the most aggressive decks we've ever seen here. Infernape and Luxray. We'll start, of course, with the Infernape because it is the first bit here. Infernape, 90 HP, really high for one of these level upping SPs here. Split Bomb is crazy, like 1 fire, 1 colorless, so energy gain puts it to 1 fire. Choose 2 of the opponent's Pokemon and do 20 to each of them. Really strong, sets up a lot of good stuff here. High Jump Kick is, again, fine, 1 fire, 1 colorless to do 50. Good to finish stuff off if you want, but really you're going to be split bombing most of the time, or you're going to be using Fire Spin from Infernape level X over here. 110 HP, decent enough, no retreat cost on this one, so that's really strong. The Poke Power lets you repel the opponent once per turn, forces them to switch their active. And Fire Spin for 2 fire and a colorless, 2 fire with the guy, right, energy gain. 100 damage, discard 2 energy on the Infernape. So this is really strong by itself. You could maybe even argue that Heatran level X could be used with this if you want to just do 100 every turn with it. Not convinced you're going to be able to set that up, but hey, with level max maybe you could. Would be very cool, but it's not generally necessary because we have one of the most iconic cards of all time in this set as well, in the Luxray. Let's go over Luxray GL first though. Bite, it's very vanilla really. Bite, 2 colorless to do 30, so you've got a single energy attack you can do, and then Trash Bolt, 1 lightning, 1 colorless, and an energy gain. So 1 lightning, double colors to do 70, but if you can't discard an energy from your hand, then you don't get anything out of it. That's fine, because most of the time you're going to be using the level X's attack here. Flash Impact is 1 lightning, 1 colors to do 60, and do 30 to one of your own Pokemon. Don't apply weakness and resistance. So, I don't know exactly how, I guess in doubles, if you had a lightning weak partner in the active, then you could damage your own partner for 30. Whoop-de-frickin' do, nobody cares. Flash Impact is a decent attack, 110 is a pretty good HP total, 0 Retreat is really good for this thing, but it's mostly about this Poke Power. Bright Look, when you level up your active Luxray, you just gust the opponent. It's so strong. You don't have to gust, obviously, but you can, and it's got no retreat. So even non-SP decks will often play like this and a bunch of Poke turns in order to pick it up and reuse it and just have gusting for the game. It's ridiculously strong. Super clean attack as well. Yeah, like 60 for 1, and if you're playing an SP deck, you can put this on like a Crobat that you were going to Poke turn anyway. And yeah, it's just really clean. If you play this with Manectric, you can put it on any bench Pokemon that's not Manectric, and you won't actually take that damage, so it makes it really aggressive. Really cool. On to Mismagius, which is probably the weakest of the level X's in this set, but still worth talking about. Psychic removal on the base Mismagius GL is very funny, not very good, but if you can flip 2 heads, you discard all energy on the defending Pokemon. That's pretty neat. And Grudge does 20 for Psychic Colorless, plus 10 for each prize the opponent's taken, so gets up to 70 damage at most, which is neat, I suppose. Single energy attack is always worth looking at, so there is that. And then when we level it up to 100 HP again, so it's fine. Magical Return is an interesting effect here. As often as you like during your turn, return a Pokemon tool or technical machine from from any of your Pokemon. It doesn't actually have to be an SP. Just return them to the hand. So there's not a lot of tool diversity at the moment, but we do have like Unknown G in an SP deck. Of course, as energy gain. Unknown Q could be used here as well because it's got a 1 energy retreat cost, and just as often as you like, you can bounce stuff back. So you can pay less to retreat. You can rearrange where your unknowns are. It doesn't get power sprayed because if you spray it, it's as often as you like. So yeah, there's some good manipulation you can do with this. Darkness Magic for 2 Psychic and a Colorless counts the number of cards in your own hand and puts that many damage counters on the defending Pokemon, up to 8 in total. So 80 for 2 Psychic would be pretty powerful if you get it out. So respectable enough card, just not as good as the rest of the stuff around it here. Its main utility really would be bouncing different unknowns and such. In a different format, this effect is really strong, but we just don't have that many good tools right now. And then there is Snorlax. Snorlax has got a couple of ways that you could play it here. We do have one from the Diamond Pearl base set that for like 1 energy stops the opponent from retreating. I don't think we're really going to be using that one though, because it's not the strongest one here. I think the main one we want to use is this guy actually, despite being the common. As long as this Snorlax is asleep, the opponent's active can't retreat. So it's got that block effect, but not on an attack, which is really good. Sand Tomb style effects are very powerful in formats like this, where we are not necessarily able to play as many warp points. It pressures the Poke turns, it makes it so that Claydol is maybe a liability. Very cool. The actual Snorlax itself has got some neat things going for it too though. 2 colorless energy for 20, but 50 if the Snorlax is asleep, because it can use it even when it's asleep. And then Heavy Press is a bit expensive really, 40 for 4, if you flip heads it's 80, and if tails you fall asleep. So it tries to synergize with its own thing. You're never going to use this attack, it's not really that powerful. You might wonder how you're going to get your Snorlax to sleep, and that's where this one comes into play, surprisingly enough. The level X goes up to 130 HP, so plus 30 on it. Not quite as bulky as like Regigigas, but still pretty respectable in its own right. And Big Appetite is the main way that this thing's going to be going to sleep. Once during your turn before you attack, if Snorlax is active, you can draw up until 6 in hand, and then put the Snorlax to sleep. This lets you use Toss and Turn to do 50, and if you stay asleep in between turns, that gives you your ability to stop the opponent retreating, which is pretty cool. If you need to heal though, Exercise for, again, the expensive 4 energy, but it does 80 damage, and you can discard as many energies from your hand as you like, and if you do, remove that many damage counters from the Snorlax. It's a little bit costly, admittedly. Discarding energy specifically is painful. I wish it was just discard cards in general, but yeah, you could manage it. There are ways of getting those energy back in hand, which is fine enough. There's a bunch of Rotom forms as secret rares in this set as well. They have their own little subset here. They're not very good though. They They do the type shift thing like the Rotom I played in Platinum did, where you can shift them to their alternate types. And it's interesting because Rotom in Gen 4 was always Ghost Electric, so it didn't actually have these alternate types, but I guess they did this like because the mechanic is cool, and then Gen 5 went ahead and did this anyway. So like you can make this Rotom a water type for the turn, which is neat. The problem is like they just don't do a whole lot. Their attacks are not particularly impressive overall. Even with the weakness shifting, it's just not good enough. Like 40 for free is just not there. If it was an SP Pokemon, you could maybe justify it, but it's not, so you can't. They do have a supporter card that you can go with them though, that lets you Ninja Boy your Rotom to a different Rotom entirely from your deck, which is kind of neat. But yeah, it still doesn't really do enough, unfortunately. Too bad, too bad. Promo wise, just because they're down here, the main one is Toxicroak G here. This SP Pokemon for single energy plus a single psychic plus the energy gain does 20, and if one of your Pokemon was KO'd by damage last turn, it does 60 plus poison instead. This gives SP Pokemon a great fighting type card that they can use for extra coverage, so most SP decks will play one copy of this if they can. And then Leap Away is actually pretty good too. If Toxicroak is active, you can flip to return it back to hand. It's like Super Scoop Up, but for specifically the active Tox, which is fine. Once you've used it, you can just get it back. Other cards that we have here, Arcanine is very interesting. The Growlithe that we have in this set, apart from looking really cute, the Growlithe itself searches your deck for a fire energy to attach to itself, so it has its own inbuilt acceleration, which is quite nice. Arcanine itself has no weakness when it has fire energy attached, which gets around the usual thing that fire types are always weak to water. Burnout can do 60 for 2 energy, but also burns the Arcanine, so sure, I suppose. I don't know if there's a way of stopping you from being affected by special conditions right now. 60 for 2 is decent, I suppose, but SP Pokemon generally will do about that, so eh. And then Flames of Rage is the main attack here, I suppose. 1 fire, 2 colors to do 60, discard a fire from the Arcanine, and then do 10 more damage for every damage counter that's on it. Sure. I don't know, it's not amazing, but it is there anyway. Bryson? No, Bryson's the gender. Who is this guy? Byron? I forget. I know he's Roark's father, but, you know, Gym Leader 5. I forget exactly what his name is. Doesn't matter. He's got a Bastiodon. It's not very good. He's also got a Steelix down somewhere. I think it's in, like, the uncommon slot. It's also not very good. 4 energy. If you flip heads, it does 80, sure. But if you flip tails, it's 30. So, yeah, no. There's a Darkrai from Cyrus in this set, which is intriguing. There are ways of using this that could be kind of cool. Put a damage counter on each of the opponent's Pokemon that remains asleep between turns. This does stack if you put more Darkrai G in play, which is kind of fun. And then Darkness Sleep for 50 damage for Dark Double Colorless. If the opponent already has a damage counter on them though, they fall asleep. So Crobat Ping gets them to sleep. Potentially then, if they don't wake up, you can do the damage. I think it's probably better to just use this with the Darkrai's from, like, Legends Awakened and then the level X one. I think it was it's Majestic Dawn, the one that auto sleeps when you bench it. And then just, like, yeah, use it with the Darkrai level X, potentially. I think it's too clunky, really. But if you're hellbent on playing it, that's the way you would do it. Candice gets a couple of decent-ish cards here. Frostlass can force the opponent to switch and then sleep the new thing that comes in. That's kind of cute. You could do that with just energy gain as well, which is nice. And Psychic Colorless, so pairs well with a lot of other SPs. It doesn't take water, which is nice. 30 damage, but if the opponent's affected by a special condition, 50, and then heal that condition. Possibly works with a Skuntank. Possibly works with stuff like that Darkrai. I think 50 even for 1 energy plus an energy gain. 50, just 50 to the active, I don't know. I think I'd rather just play the Honchkrow, so there is that. Jirachi is insane. I haven't actually seen many decks playing this card, which is surprising, but this card is absolutely wild. Maybe not as your only starter though. 60 HP, 0 retreat, so you can get to your ideal starter, which is good. Final Wish, if Jirachi would be KO'd by damage from an attack, search your deck for any one card and put it into your hand. Really, really nice. You can use this on your own KO'd stuff as well, so you could like use this as a Luxray fodder, I suppose, to flash impact to it. Only takes 2 and then it dies, right? But if the opponent KOs this, then you're guaranteed any one card that you want into hand, which is good. And then Detour for 0 energy copies your supporter card that's in play. So again, pretty solid. No energy required, no retreat, so you can easily just start putting your energy on the other stuff. And yeah, if the opponent's got to deal with it in order just to stop you copying your supporter all the time, maybe this is a way that Bertha's Kindness could actually, or Bertha's Warmth even, could be used, right? Solid card. Lucario GL is pretty important for a lot of different decks here. It applies all weaknesses in play as ×2 instead of their usual amount. So all SP Pokemon are already ×2 weakness, so for the SP deck this just works really, really well. For other decks this can still work because all the level X's really have like, you know, ×2 for the most part. So that's nice, and then some of the stuff is like +40 etc. that you don't really care about keeping anyway. Its attack is whatever, 30 plus 10 for every energy on the opponent's active. For metal double colorless, that's not really gonna matter, but it's more the effect that's really good here. So like SP toolbox decks that use a variety of different things, I used Lake Boundary last set to accomplish this same thing. Now we have access to that, which is really good. Rampardos is funny because this effectively has Tyranitar from Neo Discovery. It has its attack without the damage to the active, but it has its big attack as its main thing. 1 fighting, 1 colorless for every bench Pokemon in play, yours and the opponent's. You flip a coin, and if that flip is heads, it does 30 to that Pokemon. Technically with Manectric you could mitigate the damage you do to yourself, but yeah, very flippy attack, doesn't hit active, blah blah blah. Rend is also like fine. If the defending Pokemon's got any damage counters on it, you do 60 instead of 40 and it costs fighting double colorless, so sure. Not amazing. Roserade is very, very good for the same reason that the Trapinch was good. 1 colorless energy, so even just energy gain is enough for this thing. The defending Pokemon is poisoned, can't retreat during your next turn, and takes 10 damage. So really, really good combination of stuff there. The fact of it stops the opponent retreating and is slowly whittling them down is kind of devastating for a lot of the stuff. This can be interesting versus Claydol, if you can drag the Claydol in with like Luxray or something. Long Whip is kinda cool. If the defending Pokemon is affected by a special condition, you can do 30 to any one bench Pokemon instead. This actually counts your own, which is kind of weird. Grass colors to do that 30, it's fine, right? Like 1 grass plus energy gain would get you there. So it's a very efficient attacker, and spreading damage around can be kinda cool. We do have Skuntank, which you can use with this. So yeah, there's some combos for it. Haven't seen it in decks, but that doesn't mean it's bad. Shiftry gets a lot of really silly cards. This one is no different. If it's your active Pokemon, the opponent flips tails all the time during their own turn. That's the best it can do, but it's very funny nonetheless. Beedrill is absolutely insane and world's winning. This deck is crazy good, and we're probably going to see this on Saturday. Flutter Wings lets you just search your deck for a grass Pokemon, show it to the opponent, put it into the hand, so it gets more Beedrill parts out. I have the Beedrill from Great Encounters here as the main thing you do with it, because for 1 grass energy this does 30 for every Beedrill you have in play. We now have all the parts to make this deck absolutely insane. The Broken Time Space lets you just search, a ton. You play a 2-2 split, because you can use this once per turn per Beedrill, and it can search your deck for Beedrill. So you can get your setup by searching for more of this one, and then you can get your attack by just blitzing with this. And the fact that you can go Night Maintenance, shuffle a Beedrill line into the deck, use like 2 Flutter Wings plus a Roseanne or a Bebe Search, and you have that entire Beedrill back in play. It's incredibly resilient, it's extremely energy efficient, and it does 120 damage when fully set up for 1 energy. Crazy, crazy stuff. Moving back along here, I kind of feel like this Bronzong is almost good. For no energy, both players shuffle the hand into the deck and draw up to 4 cards. So this can be very good disruption in the early game. The problem is then you get rid of your like Cyrus Chain and such. So I suppose if you already had your Claydol set up, this could be pretty good. But, I don't know. The fact of it's a free energy retreat on this as well kind of seals the deal. But it's not too far away from being good. Drapion, not very good. Espeon, not very good. The Gen 1 evolutions have this undeveloped gimmick in this set, where you can just devolve the Flareon back into Eevee, and then they have an evolving attack for 1 energy of their own type plus 1 colorless, and to do like X amount of damage, and if you evolve that turn it does more. So in Flareon's case it's 40 plus 60, 40 to 60 plus burn if you evolve into it this turn. Broken Time Space would technically let you devolve and evolve in the same turn, so that's kind of cool. The Jolteon over here is 50 for the 2, and if you have evolved this turn it's 10 to each of the opponent's bench as well. That's neat, not really too amazing. No retreat is kind of nice though. And the Vaporeon snipes 40 for the watercolors, but if you have evolved this turn it snipes 60 instead. Fine, I guess. Muddy Water is probably the better effect out of these two. They're okay. I don't think their typing is too bad in terms of weakness hitting this format, but I don't think they're tanky enough. I mean, even if you play the Espeon from Majestic Dawn, and I don't like the Eevee has to survive after you devolve, so you've got a 60 HP Eevee that you can't even like fully tank with this anyway. I just don't think it's strong enough, to be honest. There's a bit of a weird Gastrodon setup in this set, which is kind of cool. Yeah, like, there's a weird thing. If this Gastrodon switches or retreats to the bench, you can move any energy you want from this Gastro to the new active. Sure. This Gastrodon lets you for 1 energy search your deck for up to 2 Gastrodon of any type and put them onto the bench as basics. You do put damage counters on them for doing so, but most of the time the Gastrodons do synergize with counters, so okay. The West Sea version, do keep in mind these evolve from separate Shallows as well if you need to play it that way. Very, very expensive attacks on this thing, so it's probably not amazing. Muddy Bomb snipes like 30 and then does 10 to everything that's not the Pokemon you sniped, which is kind of cool. And like Raging Sea for a massive energy cost, let's just put it out there. 60 plus 10 for every bench Pokemon that you have with damage counters on them. It's very similar to Zoroark at the moment, but just doesn't have the same payoff. This is fighting triple colorless, and it caps out at 110. Conversely, Flygon for granted 1 extra stage of evolution, but that's not too hard to achieve in a BTS and Gen 4 Rare Candy moment. Flygon takes less energy, has a 10 less cap, but also has like a bunch of other really, really cool traits to it as well. There just isn't a reason to do this. I've brought the other 2 Gastros out from way back in, when was this, like Secret Wonders, because they are sort of neat. That you could maybe choose to get with the other Gastro's Calling Wave thing. Osmotic Pressure over here lets you shift damage counters from Gastrodon EC to West Sea, which, okay, it's specifically this EC, so meh, you know. 80 for free was decent at the time, but obviously it has to be at full health for that, so lame. And then the other West Sea one lets you, for 2 energy, do 20 plus 10 for every damage counter on itself, and then remove 2 damage counters somewhere afterwards, which is decent, I suppose. This is like the best payout for Calling Wave, but it's still not really that strong, so nobody cares, unfortunately. Golem is high HP. Bertha's like 7th Pokemon. She's got 5, I don't know why. It's got Rage, which even with an energy gain is still rather expensive here. Fighting double colorless is the main cost. 20 plus 10 for every damage counter on it. okay, if you could get a bunch on it, that's fine, but then it gets KO'd and you lose an energy gain and it's all sort of lame. Double Edge does a lot of damage, but then does half of its own HP to itself, so nobody really cares. Mamoswine is a curious card. I don't know if you can retreat this that easily, is the main problem. Whilst it's active, the opponent's Pokemon, basically, if it's not a water type, will take the opponent's active has a damage counter put on them between turns. So a hit and run recipient, more or less. Its attack is too expensive to really do anything, so we can't really talk about it that way. If there's a way of mitigating that gigantic 4 energy retreat cost that I just can't think of right now, then this card is actually pretty cool. Maybe, I mean, ideally Flygon, because you give it 0 retreat by having a water on the Flygon, but then I don't really know how exactly you're hit and running in a Flygon deck. So, meh, I don't know. Nidoqueen is absolutely ridiculous, and so many decks will love playing this card. Dialga G is needed to stop this thing from just running away with games. At any time between turns, remove 1 damage counter from each of your Pokemon. Can't use more than 1 of this power, so doesn't matter if you get 3 of them out, you still only get 1, but that's absurd. Just that passive healing on all of your stuff is very anti-spread, and this set is good at doing spread damage, so very happy to have something that can counteract it, even if it is a stage 2. Its attacks are good too, though. 1 colorless to do 40, not 1 colorless, 1 psychic to do 40. That's fine, that's decent efficiency. And then 1 psychic, 2 colorless to do 50, plus 10 for each of the opponent's bench Pokemon. So caps out at 100 if they max out their bench. Yeah, that's strong. If SP decks do tend to fill their bench very readily, and they fall foul of 100 damage quite often, so it can be a decent attacker in its own right if it has to be. It does resist Luxray too, so maybe you end up taking advantage of that. Very heavy retreat cost, but that is mitigated by Flygon as the main one, or Moonlight Stadium. Can also give it 0 retreat, so that is very, very strong. There's a Nidoking in this set as well, which I think is fine, but a little bit expensive for what it does. Maybe a dedicated Nido deck could play a couple of this though. If your active is damaged by an attack whilst you have Nidoking in play, put 2 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon, so it's like Rough Skin. It's a hard once per turn thing on this too, so just like the Nidoqueen, if you get 3 of this in play, it's not 6 counters, it's just 2. But yeah, this is for all of your Pokemon, so long as this guy's in play. So that's cool. Fling Away is a pretty hefty 3 colors to do 60, but if the opponent's got any bench Pokemon, this does 30 instead, but it also snipes 30. So instead of doing 60 raw to the active, it's 30-30 split. Which is okay, just maybe not for 3 colors energy. If we have boost energy though, we don't, but this guy's crying out for boost energy, because its second attack is also kind of like this. Kind of whopping 1 fighting, triple colorless effect here. 100 damage, that is solid, but if you flip 2 tails, this does nothing. So 25% of the time you're doing nothing with this attack. That's tough to sell, even if it is a pretty solid effect. We have a bunch of Nidos here though from Mysterious Treasures and Secret Wonders that could potentially come in. I don't think the Secret Wonders Nidoking is particularly good. You don't really need this anyway because you've got Psychic as a coverage type regardless. But it is there anyway because its attacks can do... it can cost less, more or less is the reason for it, because we do have Nidoqueen that can give all of your non-Queen Nidos less colorless in their attack costs. So suddenly that triple colorless is just potentially 0 if you get 3 of these in play too. How are you going to do that? That's another question. But yeah, you could potentially play like this guy. It's also a relatively strong attacker, like 2 psychic and a colorless, and it does 90 if you overbench the opponent. 50 if you, matching or have less bench. But with a deck like this, you're pretty much always going to overbench them. So, kind of cool. If you can get 3 of this out and make Gigahorn a 1 fighting cost move, I'm going to use that. Seems kind of sick. We have a Nidorina with Rescue that can get Pokemon back from the discard as well, which is pretty strong. And the Nidoran draws a card for one colorless, so, you know, starter Pokemon right there. It's fine. That's the best I can say for it. Raichu GL, very sweet card here. No retreat cost on this thing, and very efficient attacks too. One colorless or one energy gain. Choose 2 of the opponent's bench and do 10 to each of them. It's not a lot, but it's also for very little too, so, you know, decent early game card. And then it's actually good late game too, because it works in these spread decks. Repeat Lightning for Lightning Colorless does 30, plus 10 for each of the opponent's bench that have any damage counters on them. So if you're doing your job properly, and like you can Crobat for this as well, you can force the opponent to have like 4 or 5 Pokemon on the bench with a damage counter on them, and then do 70-80 damage for essentially 1 energy and an energy gain. I love this kind of attack because it's a Cyrus's Conspiracy, like charge out of nowhere sort of thing. So yeah, really solid. Rhyperior isn't too good, but if you're very good at flipping heads, double Laria, this is quite a strong attack. So there is that. There is another Snorlax in this set, but I just don't think it's anywhere near as good as the Toss and Turn one. So sure. For 0 energy though, get 4 basic energy out of your discard pile. That's kind of sick. Don't know how you're getting out the active after that, because it's a colorless, so Flygon can't even be the answer here. I don't know, but I mean, we don't have that many ways of recovering mass energy, so kinda cool. There's a Vespiquen that lets you heal, I suppose. I don't know why you would, but okay. It doesn't have enough HP to tank that way. There's a Walrein in this set as well. This lets you, when you evolve into it, you can attach as many water from your hand to it as you want, but Cold Crush is just so expensive. It's 2 water and 2 colorless and a energy discard to do 70 and discard an energy from the opponent's active. Just no. Way too much. What else we got? Electrode is funny because it does 100 damage to itself with Reckless Bomb. Also does 20 to each of the opponent's Pokemon, so I suppose that's kind of cool. But we have better ways of doing that. Just play Infernape, it's so much better. There's a Gengar that just doesn't have nearly enough HP here and is too expensive with that second attack. If this attack was Psychic Colorless, to put 3 damage counters on one of the opponent's Pokemon, and then you can choose to shuffle the Gengar back into deck, maybe it would be playable, but it's not. Glaceon is cute, I suppose. I don't think it's going to be able to see play, but if it's active, then all damage the opponent deals is reduced by 10, which is kind of cool. Stink 30 for Water Colorless, we've moved past that, but fine, it's not the worst. And if the opponent doesn't discard a card from their hand, 1 Water, 2 Colorless to do 50 and Auto Paralysis. Whoop-de-doo. Not nearly strong enough. I think the agility-based thing that we had before is just much better. Like I said, Bertha gets far too many Pokemon. Don't know why. This one's... the Hippowdon is terrible though. Like, okay, you can reduce damage by 10 if it's got a fighting energy on it. Nobody cares. Biting Crush does no damage really, so no, yeah, just whatever. Leafeon is insane, and we are bringing back Leafeon Level X for use specifically with this card. Energy Refresh, if it's active, lets you heal 2 from any Pokemon that you attach an energy card to. From hand specifically. So this obviously synergizes very well with Leafeon Level X's Energy Forcing, where you attach any energy card from your hand to one of your Pokemon. So you can use that to heal your thing, and then you can potentially Lucian's Assignment to move the energy where you actually want it if you do choose that. There's actually a tool card you could use as well though. Energy Link is kind of neat to maybe do that sort of thing. Or I suppose you could play it with Sceptile like a boring person and Energy Trance, but whatever. 1 Grass, 1 Colorless to do 40, attach a basic energy from your hand to one of your Pokemon. This will actually heal the Pokemon that you attach to as well, so that's cool. Grass double Colorless to do 60 and Auto Sleep is fine. We have the evolution support from Majestic Dawn as well though, so we have an Umbreon that lets you play this with no weakness and no retreat whilst Umbreon is in play. There's an Espeon that gives it plus 20 HP, and it's a grass Pokemon, so Shaman Level X gives it 40 extra HP as well. So you could technically make this a 170 HP Leafeon, which is really sick. So, yeah. A champion here technically can force the opponent to shuffle their active back into the deck. That's kind of cool. It's like Dark Machamp, where you have to do it whilst the opponent's got a bench. So it's only kind of cool. Sharpedo can discard energy if you flip heads when it's active and takes damage. Okay. Starmie is kind of neat. Once during your turn, you can get a water energy from your discard pile, put it into hand. That's cool. The Vibrava I didn't mention for the Flygon here, but Vibrava is a really good game ender, where for 1 colorless energy you do 20 for every energy in the opponent's discard pile. If you don't end the game immediately though, those energy go back into the opponent's deck, so make sure you use it as the final attack for game, I guess. Aerodactyl's kind of cool. The opponent can't level up their active for fighting colorless, sure. Collect for energy gain, draw 2 cards is neat on a 0 retreat, I suppose, so there's that. Ambipomp's going to be very important next set when Garchomp C comes in. Snap Attack does 60 if the opponent has no energy on them for 2 colorless, which is any energy plus the energy gain. It only does 20 if they have energy on them though, but for attacks that discard all the energy on the Pokemon, specifically Garchomp, who is then weak to colorless, extremely important tech card, so expect to see it. Otherwise, there's not a ton left. Fortress is very funny because it potentially just does 80 to itself, which is amazing, but it also does a lot of damage too, so I guess it's cool, but yeah. The Houndoom in this set is weird, takes fire energy from a dark type one when the previous SP one was dark energy on the fire one. Anti-synergistic if you ask me, and also it's just bad, so nobody cares. The Kakuna that goes with the Beedrill just passively takes 20 less damage on the bench, so that's cool. Kecleon is a wonderful meme. It's every single type at the same time, so it always benefits from weakness, always hurts from resistance as well, mind you. But for a very expensive triple colorless, flip 3 coins, do 10 plus 20 for each heads. With enough buffing, maybe, but it's a meme and nothing more. And then last but not least is well, there's 2 cards. Quagsire, if it's on the bench, it prevents all damage done to it, which is neat. And then Punch and Run for water double colorless does 40 and switches to Quagsire, so maybe this is your hit and run card with the Mamoswine. Flygon, Quagsire. Hit and run into Mamoswine, put a water on the Flygon so that Mamoswine retreats for free. Yeah, it's cool. Doesn't do much though, let's be honest. We can do far stronger attacks at this point, so I'm not really convinced it's that good. And then we have Turtwig. This card's not going to matter until we get Expert Belt, but oh god, when we get Expert Belt, this thing hurts people. For some reason, yeah, we get this instead of like Cherrim from Gardenia. Never understood that. Doesn't matter. As long as Turtwig has 60 or less HP remaining out of its initial 90, it does 30 more damage with its attacks to the active Pokemon. Its attack is Giga Drain. For 1 grass and 2 colorless, you do 30, and then heal as much as you dealt to the opponent. So if you have 60 or less HP remaining, you do 60, and then heal 60. Even if you kill the opponent, you still heal, because the damage is not capped at however much HP the opponent has. When Expert Belt comes into play, this then becomes a 110 HP guy that does 80 every time it uses this thing, which is absurd. So yeah, it's very funny. You could use this with Shaman if you want to get extra HP. I don't think you need to though, but yeah, this Turtwig hurts people, and I don't know. I don't know if I'm okay with that. There's a very funny Weezing in here as well as the absolute last card. If it's confused and KO'd, the opponent can't take a prize. It self-confuses with damage breakdown, but yeah, it's never going to actually be good. And that is this very, very long set here. Again, so many of the cards are worth talking about. The SP cards in particular are ridiculous in this set. And they're going to change the game for a long time to come. I think the Luxray is in a lot of decks, almost all decks actually. You know, because it's disgusting. So strong. The Infernape is incredible with its own thing here. I think the Gallade is really cool. The Flygon is a very strong deck in its own right. The Beedrill is arguably best deck. It was the world's winning deck, so it's potentially best deck in format. The Nidoqueen helps so many different strategies out if you can evolve to it. The Leafeon is really, really cool. And yeah, there's just so many strong cards in here. SP Radar is a massive consistency boost as well. There's a bunch of different things specifically for the SP guys, and there's way more than I could even talk about here. So, if you have made it through all of this, thank you very much for watching. And these just keep getting longer and longer. There may be a breaking point at some stage because there are only going to be so many cards to talk about in the future formats. But this was a time in the game where genuinely everything that came out was of a reasonable sort of power level where it's like, yeah, this card is cool to play, we could try this out and make like a dozen different decks per set. And you don't really see that nowadays. But that's all good. Variety is something that I really enjoy seeing in the TCG, so happy enough to have that. Yeah, so if you've made it through this far, we're going to have one play session with myself, Pepper, and Sai during this weekend, where I say this weekend at the time of recording, so there'll be one where we play with our ban list and such, and we're just going to play, I imagine it's going to be like Luxray, Luxray, and then I don't know what I'm playing yet, but maybe some sort of Gallade spread, or if I can make the Leafeon deck work, I might just play that. And we'll do our ban list stuff from there, and then next week when Matt comes back from his getting married, kind of an important thing to skip for, right? When he gets back from that, we will have the full Worlds format where we can play whatever the heck we want, which will probably be whatever decks we didn't play for this, or whatever wacky combination I can come up with stuff. So yeah, hopefully they're good rounds. We've had a lot of really good games in the recent sets, so I'm looking forward to it. Till next time though, thank you very much for watching, and yeah, take care.